Hello, everybody. So my name is Richard Pope. I've only got 10 minutes here, so I'm going to, if I may, we'll talk a bit quick. But I'm going to speak quickly about a project I spent some time on earlier in the year called Habitat. So Habitat is a self-hosted, programmable geospatial data store, but it's more like, think like a digital assistant, kind of like Google Now or If This Then That. So it's something you host yourself, store your personal data in, and kind of run things over. And it will kind of like send you messages. I'm going to talk a bit about how it works in a minute, and then try and do a bit of a demo if there's time. But kind of before that, I wanted to speak about kind of where this idea came from, because I think it might be applicable to some other projects. So there's five kind of itches here I was trying to scratch with building this proof of concept. The first of which is kind of like what we think of as personal data, I think is changing to include fairly abstract things like the picture we have in our heads when we think of our neighborhood. This is basically the thing that Google now is building in the background, so it knows to tell you when you're home. And it's actually very abstract. I mean, that's kind of like about 15 minutes from where I live, but there's some bits I don't really go very often. It's just, I think these things are going to start becoming important. Similarly, as we get more and more software in more and more places, I think the default UI is moving towards context and push rather than mice and keyboards. So this is the kind of space that Google Now and Facebook can easily do a kind of in, and geospatial feels like the most important context a lot of the time. Thirdly, the amount of data, you kind of heard this earlier with Andrew's talk. The amount of data that we're all generating is going up and up and up, and even if you look at the number of sensors that are in a mobile phone that a web page can access now, it's kind of exploded in the last couple of years. So things like the battery light status and the ambient light and the kind of geolocation one people probably know about, but with that associated with device orientation, this is just like shed loads of data. So where do you want all that data to go, and who do you want to be the broker? Do you just want it to be Google? I don't know. It feels like there's a lack of alternatives there at the moment. Number 4 was, is everyone familiar with cucumber tests? Was anyone not? So they are kind of human readable software tests, taking the form kind of given when then. It's normally like given when I log in, I should be able to see my account page. But you can potentially repurpose these things as a kind of human language, a natural language interface onto data as well. So this is a photograph from a hack day that the UK Environment Agency organised, and an idea of maybe using cucumber tests to run over environmental data. So you can say, when there's a certain amount of ammonia in the River Avon, then there's a legal breach. So this is a kind of another idea I wanted to explain, which is like explore, is like, can you reuse these cucumber tests for things other than software testing? And then finally, the other thing is that kind of it feels like now OpenStreetMap's got more complete. The value is less in the map and more in the polygons. So you can think of OpenStreetMap as a land use map, a series of land use polygons for pretty much the entire planet. And that's really powerful. So this is like an experiment I built late last year, year before, of just trying to I downloaded a bunch of polygons from OpenStreetMap, put them in a MongoDB database, and then had a web page that checked my current location and just said, where am I at the moment? So you can then ask, you can have an API, which is like, am I in a park? Or am I inside a building? So you take all the outlines of all the buildings in London, and you kind of try and work out whether you're standing inside it. And you could then build other things on top of that, like maybe your website is slightly different when you're inside to outside, it's slightly different in a park. So those are the kind of five kind of itches I wanted to scratch with building Habitat. I'm now going to speak a little bit about what it is, how I built it, how it works, what it's made of, and then I'll try and do a demo, hopefully, if there's time. So Habitat is a data store. It collects location data, or it stores location data about an individual. It has a bunch of cucumber tests stored within it, and it also in the future will have a bunch of open data sources in there as well, like the OpenStreetMap polygons. So it's just, and on top of that, so that's a server, and on top of it, it's got a basic OAuth implementation and an API. It can then take inputs from a bunch of different places via that OAuth API. And you can also edit the cucumber test via the API. So I've got a couple of example clients that I can show you in a minute for getting data in and editing those scenarios. And then every time data comes in here, these cucumber tests get run over the data, and then potentially stuff happens, where stuff might be send an email, send an SMS, ping a URL. So the cucumber tests look a bit like this in this instance here. So the most basic example I've got so far is when I'm near a point in space, when I'm within 100 meters of 0, 0, I think I'd be drowning if I was there, but then ping this URL. So this is about as far as I actually got, but where I'm kind of heading is slightly more complicated things. So linking up with the OpenStreetMap data and saying, when I'm in a park and it looks like the weather's going to rain, then send me an SMS saying it's going to rain. So this is very similar to kind of if this and that, or a kind of self-crafted Google Now. And the idea is to maybe in the future make it a bit more complicated. So this was something I built a couple of years ago to tell me whether to cycle to work or get the underground based on a bunch of conditions. And that's currently running on bespoke code, but it could run on something like this. So you start saying, when I'm at home, where home is something I've defined somewhere, and the weather from some open data looks like snow, similarly the states of the tube, then ping this URL and then make that dial move. So that's kind of where I'm heading. What it's made of, so these two example clients you'll see in a minute are built with Backbone.js and Foundation CSS. The code editor is a thing called CodeMirror, which is a kind of in-browser code editing thingy. And then the actual server itself is a kind of grab bag of technologies. So there's the actual server itself is written in Flask with an OAuth and OAuth-lib and Flask RESTful for the API. The data all gets stored in MongoDB because that's kind of the easiest thing to chuck geodata at. It's not particularly good at complex shapes, but it's kind of simple. The Cucumber tests are written, get managed by a thing called Behave, which is a Python software testing library. And when new data comes into the system, it kind of gets uses this thing called Celery, which is like a queuing mechanism. So kind of stuff goes in there, stuff happens, and we ping our URL out the other end. So hopefully, I will now try and do a demo. But I might need to quickly rearrange my displays so that you can see them. Okay. So the actual server itself is this. So if you were to install this on a box somewhere, you'd just get this. It didn't do a whole lot in terms of interface. It's just got a settings page, and it says these are the clients that are allowed to post data into this or get data out. And it's got a nice big logout button, and it's got some nice pictures of some brutalist architecture for no particular reason other than I quite like it. And then I've got these two clients on here. So which one should I show you first? So this is the one for editing those Cucumber scenarios. It's not actually authorized at the moment, so I'm going to get pinged off to the Habitat server, and I'm going to say yes, it's okay, and then it's kind of grabbed the pre-existing test in there, which I can go in and edit. So this is actually somewhere in the UK, this location, so I'm going to go and change that for one that's here. And save that. And that's saved. So that's now updated the Habitat server. And I've then got an example app for reporting location. Now, in reality, this should really be something that's running on a process in the background on my phone. So this is really like a really basic kind of just like post a latitude longitude. But you can see it working. So when I hit this button in a minute, it's going to send my current latitude longitude to the Habitat server. That's going to go into the queuing system, which is managed by Celery. And then if it matches a bunch of criteria, so if I'm within 100 meters of that point, which hopefully this computer thinks I am, then it will ping a URL. So let's see if we see if it actually works or not. So report location, browser's going to ask for location. Hopefully that worked. And then if we look in the background here, I'm not sure how easy that is to see, but this is actually the log of the Cucumber test running. So it just ran a minute ago, and it said, so it passed because it thinks I am nearby. Whereas actually, if I was going to go and change this, so if I made it, let's assume that's more than 100 meters, probably, and then we're going to report it again. The test should fail. I didn't test this earlier, so I'm kind of hoping it. So that's all good. And then you see that task then failed because it didn't meet the criteria. Whereas when it did pass, it actually would have pinged this URL here. So it kind of that kind of hopefully explains it works. I think I'm out of time now, but look, this is just to kind of sum up briefly. This is this is not kind of production ready software. It's really just me exploring a bunch of ideas I think there's some merit in. So like the code is online if someone wants to have a play about with it, but what I'd really encourage you to do is to kind of take some of those ideas and see if you can apply them to other projects you're working on. So the idea of kind of like building personal data stores that you can program, reusing Cucumber tests, and working out how we can start building geospatial tools which are not just about interrogating data, but about bringing data to us. Because if not, quite frankly, Google now and like will kind of grab this space, and there might not be much room left. Thank you. Any questions? Yep. Oh, you saw that one. So I think I didn't try this one, but if you take OpenStreetMap's got the outlines of has got the paths for trains. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think, like I said, I didn't admit this, but I think the answer is you take the line, you take the train line, and you add sort of 20, 30 meters buffer to it. You then combine that with, am I within that buffer? And also then, am I moving? So either using the kind of the accelerometer in a phone, or just sampling and seeing if like maybe you take 3 or 4 measurements, and when you've had 3 or 4 measurements within that buffered line, then you say someone's on a train. Like I said, I didn't try and implement that, but I think there's some kind of interesting stuff there. You could kind of guess people's activities based on. Anyone else? Yeah.
So for the events, have you thought about you're all provider, right?
Yeah.
So why not use ifs? And why do you want to use ifs?
Ifs?
If this and that.
Oh, I see what you mean. So partly the point I was trying to make with this is that actually some of this data is maybe too important to be siphoning off to a third party. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I hadn't really thought about that. But I think I was maybe going too far down the purist route of like making something that's completely self-contained. But yeah, building this in reality, you would want it to integrate with, you know, other services. So one of the easiest ways to get your location is actually by the photographs you take and via tweets you make, and you just kind of harvest that into one place. Cool. One more. Yep. You might need an API on your toilet, but yeah. But yeah, that's kind of the idea. Cool. Thank you.